Well, it's time for me to share the Bible with you today. And I'm going to share the Bible in Genesis chapter 21, starting with verse 14. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Probably had never done anything by herself. Probably had never had to make her own living, be able to provide her own food, have to provide her own water. Though she was a servant, she was taken care of. Surely in Abraham's house she was taken care of. So she was wandering in the wilderness of Beersheba. Now this is before this was called Beersheba, but it's all about wells of water. And as you read in the Bible, especially in the book of Genesis and Exodus too, things happen around the wells of water. And I'll tell you this, things happen around the well of water in our lives too. Let's look at what Jesus said in John chapter 4. Talking about wells. He said, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. Verse 13 in chapter 4. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him, a well of water springing up into everlasting life. So I'm around a well. I'm hanging around a well. I'm hanging around that well of water springing up into everlasting life that's in me. So there's a lot about wells in the Bible. And the funny thing about wells, the word for wells in the Bible is beer. Beer. Of course, you and I know that people drink beer, which is an alcoholic beverage. Of course, we know that. And that's what it's called, is beer. But in the Bible, the word for well was beer. And it says the wilderness of Beersheba. And this is later on, it was called that. We'll see at the end of this chapter. So let's go on there. She was wandering in the wilderness of Beersheba, and the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. Now, when it says cast the child, it sounds like this is a little boy. Well, he's a teenager. He's 16 or 17 years old, but he was not used to making his own living, fending for himself. And she, of course, seemed to be a strong mother with him. And that's what it says, she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat her down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him, and lifted up her voice, and wept. So she thought they were both going to die, and she didn't want to see him die. So she walked away from him. She walked away from him, as it were a bow shot, many, many yards away from him, as far as you could shoot an arrow. And she lifted up her voice and wept. Now, verse 17. And God heard the voice of the lad. Now, she's over there crying, but God heard the voice of the lad. What was he saying? Maybe he, having been Abraham's son, would know about God, would know to call on God. She was just weeping, but Ishmael would know to call on God, wouldn't he? Because he was Abraham's son. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. So here's another reference to a bow shot. He became an archer, a person that uses the bows and arrows. And it's something to think about how Hagar was the one that God spoke to. He didn't speak to the lad. He didn't tell us what the lad said. And I really understand this, because back where it says, in Isaac shall thy seed be called, this was not a story about Ishmael. No. And we know that the Arabs and all of the people of Muhammad, they consider Ishmael the promised child. And they circumcise their children in their 14th year, not 8 days after they're born like Isaac was circumcised. And we know that God didn't want it to be about Ishmael. He wanted it to be about Isaac. So that's why he speaks to Hagar instead of speaking with Ishmael. It didn't say that he spoke with Ishmael. But it did say God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. This lad was Abraham's son. Though he was son of the bondwoman, he was still Abraham's son. And so God was with him. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So again, his mother is strong. What did Hagar's name mean? Let's go back and see if we can see that. I forgot about what her name was. Her name was Hagar in chapter 16. And I'll have to look back in here. Seemed like it was something like strong. Let me see. H. Hagar. Because she was a strong woman. But she wasn't strong like Sarah was. Because Sarah knew that Abraham was with her no matter what. That Abraham was not going to take the part of the handmaid. That he was going to be on Sarah's side. Hagar, it says it means flight. Flight. Like running away. Flight. So that's what Hagar means. So she had to leave Abraham's place, his tents, his encamping. She had to leave all of that, and so God took care of them. God took care of Hagar, and he took care of Ishmael, and he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. You know, you can't help but wonder how that all happened. I was going to look up Paran and see where that wilderness is. You can't but help but wonder about where they lived and how they lived. We look at Hebron, where he was camped, and I'm looking for the wilderness of Paran. It's just south of Hebron, where he was, where Abraham was, and down beneath that is Beersheba. If you listen, remember in the Bible when they talk about the nation of Israel, it was always, they'd say, from Dan to Beersheba. Beersheba was always the southern spot of Israel, and Dan was the northern spot. So Beersheba was something that would be referred to over and over in the Bible. And so now that we know that it's the wilderness of Beersheba, And the wilderness of Paran is right south of all the other places in Israel. Verse 22. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee, and all that thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me here by God, that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son. But according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. Now, of course, when we talk about swearing, we don't swear, do we? Because the Lord told us not to swear. And if we look back I wanted to look back at where Abraham was with Abimelech in chapter 17. Let's see, was it 17? No, it was chapter 19, after all that happened with chapter 20 and all that happened with Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. That's when Abimelech took Sarah. Remember? He took her because Abraham said he was her brother. But here is Abimelech now coming and wanting to make a covenant with Abraham, that he knew that God was with him. God is with thee in all that thou doest. That's what he told Abraham. He knew Abraham was special. And he said, I want you to swear. You won't deal falsely with me or with my son or with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee. If you remember, Abimelech gave him sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them unto Abraham. So he gave him a bunch of possessions because God had come to him and made him know you're nothing but a dead man. He told him, you took Sarah and your whole household's going to die, and if you touch her. So now Abimelech's wanting to make a covenant with Abraham, and Abraham said, I will swear. Now let's talk about swearing. What is swearing? Swearing is saying, I won't do a certain thing. I will not do it. And lots of times you say by something. I swear on a stack of Bibles. Some people say that. I swear on a stack of Bibles I won't do it. I swear by God I won't do it. And Jesus talked to us about swearing. And we'll look over here in Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount. And so it's in chapters 5, 6, and 7, where he told us to swear not at all. Verse 34, but I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst not make one hair white or black. But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay, for whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. He wanted us to know. He said, again ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. He didn't want us to just not swear at certain times, or not swear about this or that or the other, or swear by heaven or by God's throne. He said, swear not at all. Don't say, I'm going to do this, no matter what. Because you don't know. You can swear all you want to, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to do something that God hasn't given you the power to do. You know, you can't say that you're going to do something and say, I will do it no matter what, because you do not know what can come upon you when you can't keep that oath that you've made. The Lord knew that it was sinful for us to make oaths like that, because there would be many times we would not be able to keep those oaths. And he told us in chapter, I believe it's chapter 5, chapter 4 of James. He said, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow, we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, and buy and sell, and get gain. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor, that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, If the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin." So when he said, you can't say you're going to do something on the morrow. You don't even know if you're going to be alive tomorrow. So here it is that Abimelech was asking Abraham to swear that he would be good to their sons, his sons, and be good to the land and all of that. And Abraham said, "I will swear." So he meant, I will promise, I won't do it. He made a covenant with him. And this was way before Jesus came around and said, "Swear not at all." And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water, which Abimelech's servant had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, "I wot not who hath done this thing, neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today." So Abimelech, he didn't know what his servants were doing. He didn't know that they had violently taken away Abraham's well. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, "What mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves?" And he said, "For these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well." So I'm making a covenant with you that no matter what your servants say or what other people say, this is the well I have digged. Wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear, both of them. So they were swearing that they would not be in opposition about this well. So they called it Beersheba, which means the well of the oath. They had made those oaths that he took those 7 ewe lambs, and those 7 ewe lambs meant Abraham had digged the well. When he took those ewe lambs, he was saying, "I agree, you dig the well." So then, thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. Okay? And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many days. The Philistines' land. Wait a minute. When we get on into the Bible, the Philistines are going to be the enemy of God's people, aren't they? So often. Only, well, maybe one time when David went over and was with the Philistine king there. But most all the time, the Philistines were against God's people. But this was at a time way before that. And Abraham made a covenant with this king. It seems that he was the king of the Philistines. So, and we learn of Beersheba, we learn of a grove in Beersheba that Abraham planted. And later on we find out some many things about this. First of all, we know that Jesus didn't want us to swear, and they swore. Then we find out that he had made a covenant with Philistines, and that didn't happen. That didn't usually happen. And then we found out he planted a grove in Beersheba. And if you read on into in the Old Testament, those groves, they turned out to be places of idol worship. So this is the beginning. Genesis, the beginning. And as time goes on, God sends understanding of what to do and what not to do through his law. Okay, I better go. I'm over time. See you tomorrow, Lord willing.